This is Deborah Johnson for Women at Halftime, and I'm passionate about helping women use their untapped skills, resources, and talents to create their ideal work and lifestyle, making a difference in their second half. Well, hello. This is Deborah Johnson here, and Greg joining me today.
Hi, everybody.
And if you are tuning into the video, this is especially fun because we decided to do now when we're together so you can see both of us. And so that's kind of fun. But we're talking about a great subject today because I've had several questions from some of the listeners about, how to give your kids advice about marriage, which I don't know how qualified we are in every area.
But regardless if we're qualified, we're going to go ahead.
We are, because we have made it through 40 plus years. So that's for sure. Yes. I think today is going to actually be kind of a funny one because I don't know what's going to happen. 5 questions about marriage we want our kids to ask. I don't know if they'll listen to this one, but hey, we will try.
Well, if I text it to them.
Yes, that's right. That's right. With the link. Just a couple announcements. I do have a new book coming out called The Summit: Journey to Hero Mountain. It's an allegory, which if you don't know what an allegory is, you can go look it up. It's a story, like a fantasy, a little bit of a story. And I think you'll really, really enjoy. I've loved writing it. Pre-release is in August. So it's coming up and it'll be completely released in October. So make sure that you connect with me on social media because I do a lot of Facebook Lives and you'll see all the announcements for that. So, well, let's dive in.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. First question, how do you know if he or she is the right one? Who? Now that's a loaded one.
Okay? I've still been trying to figure that one out.
I know. Well, what we talked about was we want to become the right one first. So why don't you expand on that? You can see Greg's sense of humor today. He's just
Debbie and I didn't date a real long time. We had traveled separately, but around the country for 7 years before we met. And we kind of both just happened to be at a place in our lives where we felt like we were ready to settle down and we felt like we had found the right person. Looking back on 40 plus years of marriage, what we kind of discovered is perhaps there's not the right person. Perhaps together you become the right people as you stick to your marriage and you grow as individuals and as a couple. And that is kind of where we're at right now. And the reason that's important is if you're holding your breath and you're clicking through your 20s and now you're into your 30s and you're still waiting to discover the right one, it could be that you're just afraid of a commitment and or you're waiting for something that you don't really need to wait for. If you find somebody with your own set of values, and I mean, really the core ones, and you enjoy talking to each other, you can go a long ways.
Yeah.
And I think you become the couple that you hope to be.
That is such wise words. We didn't talk about all of these questions before we got married, to be honest, but we talked a lot. And it wasn't a real long time. Our kids panicked thinking we met and married within 4.5 months. It was very fast. But we spoke pretty much every single day. And when Greg was around, he was still doing some travel. We were together talking in front of the fireplace and, my parents' house and just for long periods of time. And so there was that sort of confirmation in my mind. And I knew we're going to get into values here too, but I knew the values that we both had held would that would meld together. I knew I could trust him. We're going to talk about that too. So,
but go ahead and jump ahead.
Yeah, but I will, because I always do. I'll just completely spoil the punchline. But how, he or she, I think there's a big point of this too, is to make sure that we are becoming the right people, and that we are growing, because sometimes we're looking for that person, but we're not growing ourselves. And I think that's a really important a point about this. So,
and that's true. Like, if you become the right person first, it's going to be easier to find the right person.
Yeah.
If you're sorting through all your dirty laundry and hoping that somebody's going to come straighten you out, that's unfair.
Yeah.
And it's just much more healthy to become the right person first, settle your values, get on the right track in life.
Yeah.
And it's just much more easy to find the right person.
And it's much more fun. You're not in this sort of fix-it relationship or feeling like they need to, you're just, I need this person just, to rescue me. And because that's really unhealthy. It puts a lot of pressure, and a lot of people have a lot of problems with that. As you can tell, kind of work through the relationship, and also understand who you're marrying. And some have married into military, and they know that person's going to be gone for periods of time, or a first responder. And there's just parts of those jobs. My father was a fireman, and so he was gone for periods of time. My mom ended up doing really pretty well with all of that. And actually, we kind of enjoyed kind of just being on our own on those times. But yeah, you have to understand too, and that you're going to have multiple jobs usually. It's going to be so many changes. So anyway, well, let's move along. So this is not, too long. So we already talked about this a little bit. When is the best time?
You mean when you jumped ahead?
Yes. When is the best time to make a relationship permanent, and what's holding you back? We did talk about this. I did jump ahead. So why don't you comment on that, Greg?
When's a good time to make it permanent? So I'm going to come from the practical side. I think first is when you've got a plan on how you're going to support yourself. Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't say you have to be executing a plan. You just have to have a plan. Mm-hmm. So if you wanted to get married in college, but you knew you were going to get a degree in something, like engineering as opposed to underwater basket weaving. If you were going to get a job in something that is, a degree in something that was going to produce a job, and you knew those jobs would probably be around through most economic ups and downs, and your spouse to be is in the same boat. If you're potentially going to have two incomes, before you have children, you're fine.
Right.
The bigger question is, are you both at a position, emotionally to be able to decide on something permanent?
Right.
But once you have a plan, then you can invite each other to go along on the adventure together. And as if you're at midlife, that your journey today isn't exactly what you had planned on.
Right.
So the plan lasts about as long as it takes you to get started.
Yes.
And then, but then, part of the adventure is developing this adventure with somebody that you love. So you can't have it all figured out. You just have to know that you got the major bases covered, and go. I think that's all you really need to, start a long-term relationship. Your own emotional health and a plan together.
Right. And I'm glad you mentioned, if you're in college or you're going to school or you're just finishing maybe another degree, and, there's not a whole lot of income, but as long as you have something and you have a plan, to be together. A lot of people have survived through, we've had some friends, and it was us too. I mean, we were, because Greg was kind of at the end of his baseball career and I was just finishing graduate work, and we were, in this little spot where really neither one of us had jobs. And you did, but you were released,
But I had a degree in finance.
You had a degree. So yeah, and I had enough of a degree and enough students to come back to. And I immediately got positions in college instruction. And so there was a good plan ahead of being able to do that too. So even when there's unknowns. So that's, but not being afraid of that commitment. I think of, because some people feel like, oh, we just need to have so much more. We got to have a lot saved or whatever. Just have a good plan. And if you enjoy being together, be on the journey together. So
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the fun is being on the journey together.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. When you look back, sometimes it is. Yeah, right. Okay, well, let's get to this one. I think this is an important one. I wanted to put it in here. Why is where you stand spiritually important in a relationship? And this one is, I think, so important, not only for understanding each other, but also if you're thinking about raising a family and having, joining families, and at least talking about this, about where you are with faith and how are you going to end up, you don't want to have that little baby in your arms and now go, okay, so, well, should we baptize them? Should we do this? Should we dedicate? Should we, or where are we going to go? At least to talk about it. And you might be unsure, but at least to talk about spiritually where you are. And I feel very strongly, because I've seen so many relationships work when you're from separate backgrounds. That's, but if you decide together on something that you can do together, it works much, much better. So why don't you comment on
I think on this subject, just like a lot of important subjects, being honest up front really matters because you're talking about something that could potentially be core values. Now, we all know that a lot of people in America are nominal in their faith, and that is in name only. Mm-hmm. And so they might be Protestant or Catholic or Jewish or Islamic. And it's part of their race, it's part of their culture. And when you're talking to your potential spouse, you need to be honest about, is this something that's nominal to me? Mm-hmm. Or is this something that is part of my journey that I'm growing in, that I'm chasing after? Because if your faith is something that you're chasing after and the other person isn't, or is chasing after another faith, it could pose problems. Mm-hmm. So I think you could have couples of individual faiths, but probably if they were practicing but not developing that faith, it could exist, because you could have fruitful conversations about how one person celebrates a holiday versus how another, or what kind of values you should instill in children. But once those values become like critical, if one person views some values critical and the other one is like, oh, well, the person who values them as critical is going to win that discussion. And the problem with that is when the next discussion comes up and the other person is, critical about something, they're going to want to win that time. Mm-hmm. So, just be honest up front. If you're both just practicing, just say that, and you probably can coexist. If one of you or both of you are, following deeply and on a real journey, it would seem like it would be better to have somebody on that journey with you.
Right, right. And that's one thing that we had in common too, was our faith. And it actually built trust in me as well for Greg, because there were a lot of other guys I had dated and relationships that, oh, it just wasn't going to work. But I knew pretty much right off that I could trust you.
Now, she had an advantage, and that was that her brother-in-law had scouted me for
Yeah.
3 weeks. So we had been playing club volleyball together,
Yeah.
and we'd become friends. So she had inside info.
I did. Plus, he was really cute. So, yeah, but no, more than that he was embedded. But I mean, a lot of even dating sites online, you really just have to be careful because people can make up almost anything.
Yeah, that's true. Right.
But sometimes they're pretty thorough in some of their backgrounds and everything too. So, I've never been on one, so I don't know because I've never. Hopefully, I won't have to at any point. Don't really want to. I know that'd be horrible. But yeah, I think it's at least an important subject to talk about, to approach, and when you think about holidays and all of those, your faith can influence that. So, and how you celebrate. And with extended, that's our next question too, with extended family. How important will extended family be to your family? And we talked about this, community or private enterprise. And I've always said, you don't marry just the person, you usually marry the family, because and it doesn't matter whether or not they're close when you first get married. Somehow they just all sort of appear. And, you just, at least you want to meet them and be aware and understand the dynamic too with that family. So why don't I let you explain the community or the private enterprise, because that to me it sounds like almost a math term, but it is a little bit.
When we were talking about this, some families are communities. They've got second and third cousins, and they'll have a family gathering, let's say after Easter, and 50 to 70 people are expected to show up, and that's what I call a community.
Yeah.
And then other families, you pretty much stick to immediate families for most gatherings, and those gatherings are going to be 7 to 12, and I call those private enterprises.
Right.
And obviously, you have to be invited to be a part of the private enterprise. In the community, you can kind of slip in the side door and hopefully nobody notices you and those kinds of things.
Right.
But on extended family, so I mean, be aware of the big picture and try to think through, if you're from a private enterprise family, how will it be having 50 people all know my business?
Right.
Or if you're used to a big community where everybody's invited, what will it feel like to, be in kind of an intimate gathering?
Right.
Because that's pretty much how families are.
Right.
I think another thing to realize is that while it's important to evaluate the potential extended family, one, that doesn't mean your spouse to be is exactly like the home she came from or he came from.
Right.
But one thing we've discovered is that extended families are a little bit like putting on a sock, in that eventually they're going to fit. But there's going to be some tugging and pulling and readjusting that has to happen along the way in order for that sock fit. Right. So I would expect in the first 5 to 7 years of your marriage, you'll be talking through, what are the expectations of your parents? Here's what my parents think about you. Here's how we got to respond, those kinds of things. Yeah. So, and that's what I mean about tugging on a sock. Eventually it's going to fit.
Yeah.
But probably won't slip on, like a house shoe.
Right,
So,
right. And just to kind of elaborate on that just a little bit on community, and if you have, um, you have parents, and then you have step parents, and then you have extended cousins, and there's a lot to this, on holidays and those expectations, to be able to, get together and, to be able to, please everyone. You have to really decide you are a unit first, and then, working with those. But it's difficult with some of those expectations. My family was a little bigger because my sisters had so many kids, but we would get together, and there were larger get-togethers, but it wasn't like going to a group of 50. I mean, there were probably, how many? It seemed like it almost 25
when your aunts
to 30.
and uncles came, it was 25 to 30.
Yeah, at least. Yeah, at least. And then, but your family, you had two uncles that were single, and there were like 8 or 10 of us. And it was just,
it was much more intimate.
A lot more intimate, but expectations too, because, your mom's birthday was on the 4th of July. Heaven forbid you ever miss that. And, we wanted to be able to celebrate those things, but it was, more expectations there of making sure we made them feel special through all of those times, because that was it. That was the only family they had, were, you and your brother and our families. So that's something to at least think about. It's all workable, but you have to just understand, are you going to be able to, with your schedules, every single celebration of every, what are the expectations?
Yeah. Which holidays or birthdays are expectations, and which ones are options?
Yes.
So
yes.
that would be good to talk about.
It really would be good. But yeah, because it can cause friction really quickly.
And that's where tugging on the sock comes in.
Yes, I like that, tugging on the sock. All right, well, let's get to our number 5. We've talked about how do you know if he or she is the right one? When is the best time to make the relationship permanent? Those were all kind of covered there. Spiritual, how important that is, or where you stand, and then extended family, the community or private. Now, how important is the commitment to a marriage contract, or is it just a marriage agreement? And, because there's a lot of prenups and all this, what are the expectations, and how much should you really talk about this beforehand? It was just expected that we were just, this was it for us. But a lot of people are going into this thinking, I hope we can make it, and I mean, there's certain situations where you should split. I mean, if there's abuse, it should. Definitely. That's not right. But what's the difference between that marriage contract and a marriage agreement going into it? I think that's something at least you should really talk.
Yeah, I think the way you phrase the question kind of makes it obvious. On a contract, you got a binding agreement based on binding commitments. And typically a marriage commitment is for a lifetime. An agreement suggests, let's try this.
Yeah.
And for most of us that have been married going into halftime, we know that if we're just trying this, there's probably not enough to keep it together.
Yeah.
That life and just the process of growing as two people tend to want to cause divisions. Right. So when divisions arise, you got a choice. Is this an agreement or is this a contract?
Right.
And if it's a contract, then you got to fight your way through it, figure out how to do it, get it done.
Yeah.
So it's, a marriage is either you burned all the boats and we're going to survive, or, you got an escape boat somewhere, fired up and ready. And more than likely you'll use it.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah, if you know there's a little escape boat or you got that life raft, and okay, I'm the first one on, and let's get out of here. So because it's, there's times that you feel, you feel hurt, you feel misunderstood, you feel all of those things going on. You're tired. You're a woman going through, your change of life, and men go through this as well. And so understanding those things about your body and about each other, and if you don't talk through those things, and there's a lot to this in a relationship, just really making it through these years. And as I look back, I'm thinking, whew, we made it. I mean, it's because when you start recalling and you look at the pictures and you think, wow, there was a lot of, life that we've lived, a lot of celebrations, a lot of changes. You've gone through job changes. I have too. We've had the 3 kids we've had, and you get the baby and you always have kids, always. And I didn't totally get that when that first little baby is like, I remember the feeling that I'd never be alone again. And it's really true. So, but, and now we are facing, at halftime and about, our later years, we've cared for parents and we've all of these things. And we really want our kids to be successful and enjoy the relationship we've had. It's such a deep friendship now and I feel like we've grown more in the past years than I mean, just being able to talk, and we have regular time together, enjoying travel and all of these things. But that's come, it was a lot of busy years. We didn't have that time. It was crazy having 3 boys, 4 and under, and just working, and it's a lot of stuff that you're handling at that same time. So, but these 5 questions I think are a good, at least to approach before a permanent relationship. But I loved your comment in not being afraid of taking that step. And I think coming from a man too, that's really important because, and you've told our sons that, because there's a lot, I think, of this pressure, even more on men than women in our society. A lot of women work, and a lot of them are main breadwinners for their family as well. I came from a more traditional family. My mom was more of the homemaker. She had a side job, but and she cared for the kids. My dad was the fire captain and did other work as well. It was pretty traditional. So, but that's for men saying, don't be afraid of this. Get somebody that you trust, though, that you feel like you can be on the same team.
Yeah, you need somebody on the same team, and you need to invite them to be a part of a permanent journey.
Yeah.
All of which isn't figured out yet.
No,
right.
It's not. At least you can row together. I can't row as strongly as Greg, although I'm getting pretty strong. Oh, no. But you're together. You're on a tandem. You're going it together,
yes.
And you're pedaling together. You're going in the same direction, and that's really important in all of these questions. And I always write an article with every single show that I put out. So I make sure that you click into this and read the article as well, because I will review all of these principles. They'll put all in the same little article there to be able to review. So how do you know with the right one, not being afraid of that commitment, even, covering the faith and a contract. I liked that one especially. Well, this has been so great. I love once a month, Greg and I are on together and starting to do the video. So I just thought you'd enjoy seeing his handsome mug, and it's kind of fun to do. And next week, I will be speaking about tackling the impossible as a thought leader. There's a big talk about all of this thought leader these days, but how do you set yourself apart, and how do you tackle the impossible, what seems impossible? So I invite you to listen and subscribe. This is womenatalftime.com. You can always reach me through goalsforyourlife.com, djworksmusic.com, a number of things, but listen, subscribe, please share it. And I do these podcasts because I love to do it, first of all, but it's also because all of you are listeners. And so I really appreciate you listening and tuning in. And I will look forward to being with you next time. Deborah Johnson. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining us on Women at Halftime. Visit goalsforyourlife.com or womenathalftime.com for many more resources, downloads, and programs, or to get in touch with me. I'd love it if you leave me a review and tell your friends. So until next time, this is Deborah Johnson, signing off.